a touchdown underdog. Can Boston College pull off an upset against Louisville?
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. This is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com. And as always, the day of the game or the day before the game, we are joined by Eagle Insider writer Mitchell Wolf to talk about today's matchup against Louisville. We're going to get into what Louisville looks like. We're going to look into what the keys to the game are and give you a prediction. Mitch, how are we doing today?
Doing well. I think this is going to be a tough game to watch for BC fans. Maybe not as bad as last week for most of it, but it's about what we expect going into the season, honestly. So, it's maybe not make it more than it already is.
So this is a battle between two teams that are 4-3. And there are two teams that couldn't be more further apart in terms of how they present on the field. You have a Louisville team with actually, I got to continue to edit my voice here. I talked to some Louisville fans. It's Louisville. It's not Louisville. They were yelling at me on a podcast about this. It's Louisville. So
see, I always wonder about that because it's don't they want to differentiate themselves? Like they might want to say it correctly, whereas they don't want to, they can identify outsiders if they say it wrong.
That's how they used it though. When I said it, they all giggled. I said Louisville, and they all started giggling, and they're like, "That's not how you say it. You sound like your mouth is full of peanut butter." I'm like, "Okay." So, anyways, Tyler Shough. That's not how his name looks at all. We're talking about pronunciation again here. 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. 25 years old. Texas Tech transfer. What kind of quarterback is this? And is he going to be as dangerous as Jack Plummer, who, if you don't go back and listen to what we said about him before he thrashed PC.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that I do think he's more talented than Jack Plummer. I think he's having a great year. He's had a very injury-plagued career over 2 stops at Oregon and Texas Tech, where he was actually beat out by Anthony Brown at Oregon. So there's a fun fact for you. But he's playing really well. Jeff Brom always does a great job of getting the most out of his quarterbacks, especially if they're more experienced players. Shough, when I'm watching him, it's so funny because he just has and maybe he's just been lucky to this point, but he has this knack for getting the ball out at the very last second, right almost as he's being sacked, and he gets it down to a check down for a decent gain. And it's I don't know if that's sustainable, but he's playing really well. All of his stats are career highs in terms of the good ones. The bad ones are career lows. And this is pretty. And Louisville's had some injuries at the skill positions, and their offensive line isn't that good. So. All credit to him and the Broms and Brian Brom, the other former Louisville quarterback, is the offensive coordinator. So, all credit to them for putting together another solid offense despite having to turn over almost their entire personnel.
Now, there's a few names that are not going to play. Jamari Johnson, I believe, is their starting tight end.
Yes.
It was 3rd or 4th on the team in receptions. He's out for the year with I believe it's an ankle injury. And then the big news that came out on Wednesday was that South Alabama transfer Colin Lacey, who he was 3rd on the team in receiving yards, is going to redshirt for the remainder of the season. He hurt his collarbone during summer ball and has never really recovered. He's going to use his red shirt and leave. Those are 2 pretty big losses for there.
It seems like he's actually going to come back. That's the initial report, is that he's going to red shirt and then come back.
Right. Yeah. They want to put more, from what it sounds like from one of the Louisville guys I was talking to, he wants to get more tape on films. More play on
which makes sense. Yeah.
So they're gone, but they're gone for this year.
Yes.
And those are 2 big injuries. One that I was on a podcast earlier this week that I think is worth watching, and I want to get your take because you sent me a text about this earlier. They were saying that there's a potential that Isaac Brown, their running back, who is one of the most dynamic running backs in the ACC, I would say even more than Byshal Tutin, which is scary, could miss some of this game. He missed a big chunk of the end of the Miami game, according to them, and he might not play. But you say that they're deep at that position.
Well, so I would say that that is probably the best news for BC because I think Isaac Brown is like far and away their best running back. He is, oh, shoot, where'd it go? I thought I had it. He, I believe, leads all true freshmen in running and rushing yards this year, which is pretty impressive. Let me see. Yeah, so he leads all FBS true freshman rushing yards despite being fourth in carries. 33% of his rushes have gone for first downs, which is really impressive. And he's just a super explosive back. Like, I really love his game. He's also been super useful in the passing game. He's third on the team in targets and receptions, so they use him a lot there as well. But they've got Donald Chaney, who transferred in from Miami. He's okay. I don't think he's very much special. They have two younger players, Keywan Brown and Duke Watson, who are also pretty good. I think Duke Watson, if I remember correctly, let me see if I can find the stats. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so he is fourth on the team in carries, second in yards, and he's averaging 8.04 yards after contact per carry. And he's the only player with at least 10 carries who has more yards after contact per carry than Ashton Genty. So he's a very good player as well. Again, I don't think this offensive line is a lot to write home about, especially their tackle situation has been pretty rough. They've had some injuries. All their guys have come from like the lower levels, or they're hurt. So, maybe this is a good game for Donovan Ezeraku, but with the rest of BC, missing Cam Arnold, potentially, definitely missing Amari Jackson. It's tough to imagine BC's defense having a really good day against this entire offense.
Now, Bill O'Brien this week talked about how the defense has to improve in terms of gap integrity and doing what they work on in practice, which is kind of what he said was what went off the rails against Virginia Tech. What do you think Tim Lewis is going to have to do to slow this offense down? Because, they look on film like they're one of the best ones they're going to play this year.
Right. So it's interesting because schematically they're very different than Virginia Tech, because Virginia Tech, a huge part of it is this RPO play action, use the threat of the quarterback running. And that's not really like Tyler Shough is a good athlete, but he's not like he doesn't have a ton of designed runs, doesn't scramble a lot. So that's not really part of their offense. It's more of a traditional pro style attack. You'll see a decent amount of under center. I think they rank pretty highly in all college football, like top 15 in terms of under center usage. They're very diverse in personnel. So you're going to see a lot of different groups. You're going to see some two back sets, some two tight end sets, still a lot of three receiver sets, but you're going to see a lot of that. Maybe a little less so considering the injuries to Lacey, Johnson, and potentially Brown. So maybe you see them go a little more normal there. But so that does make it easier on the defense. They don't have to worry about Shough, keeping it all the time. I'm sure there's probably going to be like one or two designed runs because he is like a decently athletic, but it's not going to be as much as drones by any means. And their offense is kind of similar to what BC has faced in the last few weeks, in that it's a lot of like either short throws or they're going deep. They're not throwing in that intermediate area a lot. They love to do like play action deep shot. They had this one play, I forget who it was against. It was definitely a home game. I can't remember who it was, but it was a crazy play where they ran like a flea flicker fake shot play. And it was the Yankee concept where you have the deep over and then the deep post that BC used to run a ton of. And then so they ran the flea flicker. They had that deep shot, but then there was the play was designed to be a tight end screen. I was like, and that's what Jeff Brom is great at. Like, he has all these crazy designs. You think about last year, they had plays like that against BC, and obviously they had beat them on the deep shots. So you're seeing, kind of the same thing, but just packaged a little bit differently. So it's definitely made a tough match for the defense. Like you said, you have to be super disciplined with maintain your gap integrity. It'll be interesting to see who gets more of the snaps with Owen McGowan or Sione Hala next to Davian Crouch. And, even if Brown doesn't play, that's helpful, but they still, this is still a very tough offense to have to match up against, because you have to have a lot in your mind in terms of the play action and a pretty diverse run game. Like they mostly do zone stuff, but they also will sprinkle in a lot of man gap stuff. So you have to be prepared for anything.
Yeah, in terms of injuries for BC, you kind of mentioned it too. We don't have any updates yet on Cam Arnold. He was in a sling, as I mentioned earlier this week at practice. Bill O'Brien said it was precautionary and he was day-to-day. We also have not seen the Grim Reaper, Pete Thamel, tweet out anything yet. Usually he's right on top of that. And we're recording it Thursday afternoon. That's usually around the time I would expect a Thamel bomb on that. But that's definitely something worth watching.
I would also say, like, even if Cam Arnold doesn't play, I feel like he's probably going to be not 100%, because that play that when I watched it, I thought it was going to be more of a head neck injury, because the way Keke Price but he was like trying to make the tackle and his shoulder kind of hit Arnold's head and kind of pushed it all down. But I think maybe he hit the shoulder more, and that's why I was in the sling. So, not really sure exactly what it is, but I wouldn't. And again, this is just my hunch. I have no no outside information, I would just have a hunch that he's not going to play, just because then they can get him to bye week and have him much better for the last part of the season.
All right, in a moment, Mitch and I are going to look at what Boston College has to do to win this game. It's not all doom and gloom, and I think Mitch has a path of potential victory for BC, talking about what they could do if they're going to possibly pull off this upset. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol prebiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just to remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel better tomorrow. So when I first gave pre-alcohol a try, I was at a party with my family. I had a drink with my first prebiotic, and you wouldn't believe how on top of my game I was feeling the next day. So go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no question asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout for 15% off. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider and the host of this great podcast. We're on year 4. We just had celebrated our 4-year anniversary here at Locked On BC. You guys thought I was ill when I first started doing this, a daily Boston College podcast, but 4 years later, we're still here. Now I'm joined by Mitchell Wolf. We're talking about some of the keys to this game, what BC has to do to win this game. And I'm sure the first key, Mitch, is something that Bill O'Brien probably said about 400 times this past week, which is don't fumble the ball.
That's the be all end all. Like if that doesn't happen, then it's over. BC can't afford to commit turnovers, especially fumbles. We've seen it in both ways. We've seen them fumble in the red zone where they lose potential points. We've seen them fumble deep in their own territory, give the opposing offense great field position. We've seen it in the middle of the field, and then the opposing defense returns for a touchdown. So we've seen it all kinds of ways. We've seen it by the running backs.
You could write a Dr. Seuss book about that.
Yeah. Yes. So we've seen it every way possible, and it just can't happen. And, watching it, obviously, I think the biggest thing is Thomas Castellanos has to be more decisive on option plays, which is huge. And he just needs to be more disciplined about, 3 points of contact, keep the ball tucked away. And that's there's no secret sauce. It's just you have to be more disciplined, more focused on protecting the football. It is what it is. You just got to do it.
And O'Brien, during his weekly radio show, was saying that Meter asked him specifically, how do you practice that? How do you practice not fumbling the football? And it's kind of like what you were saying, Mitch. He looked at the film, saw the issues and where they came up, and there were specific things that were happening. And they practiced those types of plays over and over and over again, showed the film to Tommy, talked about where the fumbles were coming, and worked that out. So it seems like there is a way, hopefully, to get past this, but it's going to be tough. Especially, we haven't even talked about Ashton Gelati, who had 3 sacks against BC last year. We just got over Powell Ryland, who had roughly 700 sacks against BC last week. Now we got a guy who has it on film that he's done it a bunch against a much better BC front 5. How worried are you about this guy? And is he going to, protecting against him, going to be a major issue for this game?
I think the good news for this is that I think Powell Ryland is more dynamic of a pass rusher than Gelati is. Gelati's a pretty well-rounded player. He is a good pass rusher. Only has 2 sacks this year, but he has 26 pressures, which is a very good number. So that's encouraging to see. I got this information wrong, actually. But so last year, and Gelati has not played against Trapilo as much because in 2021, Trapilo wasn't playing. 2022, I think Gelati mostly played on the other side of the line as Trapilo was on the left. Last year it flipped, and also Trapilo left the game because of injury. So they haven't matched up as much, but Trapilo is having a pretty good year. Most of his sacks that I've seen, they've been these kind of more issues with the pass protection and a specific blitz that the defense has brought that's kind of confused him and the guy next to him. So it's not like him getting just purely beaten. For I think most of his sacks this year, I think he might have given up 1 this year officially. I think they credited him with 1 from last week. No, he's actually given up 2, and actually none last week, which I think it's PFF grades sacks and pressures based on are you winning quickly and immediately, not is the quarterback hanging out in the pocket for 5 to 7 seconds and then scrambling in that sack? They don't really count that as a sack. So, so that is a big matchup. And it's interesting because, we talked about Aeneas Peebles with Virginia Tech was a good interior rusher. He had a pretty good game as well. And Louisville doesn't really have that one guy next to or across from Gelati, but they're very deep. They have a lot of guys on the defensive line that play well. They are very good at getting pressure, very good at getting sacks. Named people, a lot of people might recognize as Thor Griffith, the transfer from Harvard, was on Bruce Feldman's freak list. He's starting more, and he's playing really well. So they've got a bunch of guys that'll rotate there. I do think that Louisville doesn't blitz as much, so I think that helps BC because they won't need to worry about them sending 6 or 7 players as much, which is good. And the other part is that Louisville's defense is a bit suspect in terms of both, I would say, running the ball or defending the run and defending the pass. Their cornerbacks have been pretty inconsistent. Quincy Riley, who was a really good player last year, has been kind of dealing with nagging injuries. He's not been as good. The safeties have been up and down. And in the run game, they were really good in the first 2 weeks against an FCS and a G5 team. And every week since then, they've gotten a little bit worse. And granted, they've mostly played better teams like last week against Miami. They got run on a good bit because Miami's a pretty good running team with a really good offensive line. But I'd also wonder, and this is kind of my thesis for how BC wins this game, is Louisville's played 6 games in a row, no bye. They have a short week. They're starting to get banged up. Or they're on the road. They haven't been on the road much this year. I wonder if that, maybe swings things in BC's favor where, BC has an extra day of rest. Again, they are missing starters too, but I wonder if BC's gonna be able to run the ball against this defense that I think my stat for them was, I'm going to try to remember this off the top of my head. If you looked at them versus Power 5 teams, their designed rush defense was negative 0.1 EPA, which I think was in the 50s out of the 70 Power 5 teams, so not very good. So you hope that, and that's in the path for BC to win this game is they have to run the ball well, they have to control the clock, they have to sustain possessions and have those possessions end in points. Obviously, we talked about turnovers, but you got to keep the Louisville offense off the field, give the defense rest. On the other side of the ball, I actually think I think BC should be more aggressive in this game on defense. I think that basically don't try to do this slow death thing where you're playing back and you're just gonna try to make them go the length field. I think just try to get after Shough, blitz him more aggressively than you have. He's worse when he's blitzed, not crazy, not a ton worse, but he's a lot worse when pressured, and you're not getting pressure. So just try sending more players. Louisville's extra blockers, their tight ends, their running backs are not very good in pass protection, and Louisville's offensive line has been pretty tough in terms of allowing pressure. I think they're 116th in allowed pressure rate, so they've got some issues there. So if you can create some sacks, create some negative plays, create some turnovers, that should really help. The other thing, and obviously we talked, after last week, BC had a really rough game in run defense, and I have a trivia question for you. So last week, I think BC allowed 368 rushing yards for Virginia Tech. When do you think was the last time they allowed more rushing yards than that?
My guess was Kansas.
No, but you're close. That was, I think, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. I think that was 342. The answer is 2017 against Notre Dame, when Notre Dame ran for 515 rushing yards.
I forgot about that game.
With Brandon Wimbush and Josh Adams.
Yep. All right, yeah. So that's been a big issue too. So, what offensively you're saying they gotta get points, and that's going to be a major key.
I think yes, but I think they need to turn this into a rock fight. I think if this turns into a shootout, BC is not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to score with Louisville. They're not going to be able to stop Louisville from scoring probably. So you're going to have to turn this into kind of like what the Missouri game was early. Again, don't have the turnovers, but make it a lower scoring affair. Otherwise, Louisville is just going to blow you out of the building. And again, Louisville has had some issues with especially defending explosive plays, especially explosive passes. So, hit on a deep shot or two to Reed Harris or somebody, that could be a big thing, but you've got to control the clock in this game and obviously maintain control of the football.
So, there's also we obviously talk about what's happening on the field, but it's also a Friday night at Alumni Stadium. Weird things happen at BC. You never know. And I know that's not like a statistic that you can bring to the bank, but they haven't lost at home yet. This is going to be a big test for them.
It's weird things happen. It's either BC scores a really wonky upset win, or they just get absolutely boat raced by Clemson or somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's basically it. So in a moment, Mitch and I are going to wrap things up. We're going to give our predictions, and we're going to talk all about what we're thinking is going to happen. You're going to want to hear our thoughts on all that in just a moment. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't win, Prize Picks keep your lineup live. You're not going to beat that. Nothing's more frustrating than watching football. You have a daily fantasy and one of your guys goes down. It's the worst. Prize Picks has got you covered. Prize Picks picks its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, secure, and easy. When my picks hit, I can get my money as quick as 15 minutes. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive $50. It's guaranteed. So all you got to do is sign up, download the app today, and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you pick your first $5 lineup. Repeat and get it. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after your play in your first $5 lineup. That is Prize Picks. Now let's go on to our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel, this is our weekly picks of the week. And with FanDuel, you can get yourself into the game with a big return with America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page when you place your bets. This is our segment where Mitch and I make a few FanDuel picks, and we didn't talk about who we're picking the games before the start of this show, but I got a few I want to throw at Mitch. The first one is the battle between two ACC powers, the Syracuse Orange and the Pittsburgh Panthers. Pitt is a 5.5-point favorite. The game is in Pittsburgh. What are you going with this game?
Yeah, we're totally not going to edit this. So with two versions of picks where no matter what, it comes out as us being right since we're recording this early. I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going to go with Pitt. I honestly think Syracuse is probably the better team. I think, to be completely frank, I think both of these teams' records are very fraudulent. I think Pitt has needed multiple, double-digit comeback wins in the last quarter. They were losing to UNC at one point. They barely beat Cal, who didn't have Jaden Knott, and Cal might have a worse field goal kicker entire special team situation than BC. He's been terrible. So I think Pitt's gotten lucky. I think Syracuse has gotten lucky. They should have lost to UNLV. They probably, if NC State had any measure of competence, they might have lost that game too. So I think that no matter who wins this game, I'm going to say the loser is fraud. So it works for me. But I want to go with Pitt here because I think having to go to Heinz Field on a week. This is another one where Heinz Field on a week, or I still call it Heinz Field, but it's Acrisure Stadium or whatever. But having to go there on a weekday, I'm going to go with Pitt here. I think again, Narduzzi having a coaching experience advantage over Fran Brown. I think they'll have enough to trip up Kyle McCord, and I think Pitt wins. And I'll say they cover. I don't love it though.
So I look at both of their schedules too, and we can't make a whole segment out of this, but I feel like BC would be like 5-1 or 6-0 with some of the schedules they've been playing, and the media falls all over these two teams. I went on another show and I was like, these two teams are not legit, but whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of teams that I may or may not be legit, I want to talk about two ranked teams playing, Notre Dame and Navy. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame is a 13.5-point favorite. I love Navy in this.
I don't. I think this being played at MetLife, they always have this game there's a cool history behind this rivalry, which I recently learned about. Then we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go into it. But look it up; it's cool. Notre Dame has a lot more talent than Navy. Notre Dame is used to playing these triple option teams. This isn't going to be completely new for them. They have some experience doing it. Navy has played well, but if you look at the teams they have played absolute nobodies. Teams who don't have the athletes, they don't have the preparation to be ready for the option. Notre Dame has athletes. Notre Dame has a good defense. They are missing Benjamin Morris in their best corner, but you don't really need corners when you're playing. Even though the Academy's throwing the ball, you don't really need your corners as much. I think Notre Dame wins this one, and I think they win it by at least 2 touchdowns.
All right. Speaking of two ACC powerhouses, we're going to do one last one. I'm going to skip LSU and Texas A&M because I just don't care. I want to go with SMU and Duke.
I thought you were going to do Wake
Florida
Forest,
State,
Stanford. No, Wake Forest, Stanford. That's another ACC joke. Oh, so SMU, Duke. Okay.
So we have SMU at -11.5, but Duke is 6-1.
Duke's another one of those fraudulent teams that I'm concerned about. This is at Duke, and so I'll that's probably, I think if this was in Dallas, I think SMU would be at 17-point favorites or something, but I'm going to go with SMU to cover here. I think Duke is just going to be outgunned here. I think this is going to be a high scoring one, but I think SMU wins this one pretty handily.
I agree with you on that one.
You got an interesting coaching matchup of Manny Diaz and his former offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley on the other side of the field, so that's fun.
All right. So there's our picks for the day. So when you get a hunch, get into FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. All right. Locked on Boston College. AJ Black here with Mitchell Wolf of Eagle. We're both of Eagle Insider. I'm the host here. We are wrapping things up, but when you get a chance, there's a new episode of the Locked On ACC Squad. I'm sure they're going to have great things to say about BC. Check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, let's give our predictions for this game. I tweeted yesterday that I'm starting to talk myself into BC winning this. After I went on a podcast, I'll go first here. I went on a podcast earlier this week, and they were like, every Louisville podcast I've been on have BC losing by like 4. And I'm like, I got BC losing, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with my guns on this one. BC losing this one 35-20. I don't think they have the answer to anything Louisville has. I think maybe a late score will make it closer than, like a 15-point spread, but I get a feeling
it's a 7.5 point spread.
7.5. Yeah. I'm going to go with like 35-20.
Okay. I think if we go back a few years, a few times I've kind of called my shot for BC to win games that they're not really supposed to. You go back to 22, I was like, they're going to beat Louisville if they did. I think I did it last year. I can't remember which game, but there are times when I'm able to identify a path, and I think BC has a path here. Like I said, make it a rock fight. Don't turn over the ball. I think they can run. I think they should be able to run the ball well against this team. I think that I think there's a chance this could be a get right game for BC's pass rush. The problem is that a lot of things have to go right for BC to win this game, and traditionally this season, none of them have gone right at the same time. And maybe you could argue that BC is due at this point. I'm going to go with the more likely outcome that it continues to happen. I've got Louisville winning 38-28. I think BC can keep this interesting into the second half, but I think that probably a turnover. I think they probably turn the ball over twice. I think one will come in the second half that'll pretty much take them out of it. Maybe they get a late score to make it a little more respectable, but yeah, with what's going on with BC in terms of just their inability to put together a complete game, the injuries on defense, I just don't really see a more realistic, likely path for them to win this game.
I've seen enough of the defense. I feel like the defense has been okay at times, and maybe they can fix that. Maybe the Virginia Tech issue in the second half of Virginia was fluky. I have not seen the offense consistent. I feel like since Duquesne
quarter, like a consistent quarter.
Yeah, you get quarters and stuff like that. You're not going to beat teams like Louisville if you play like that.
Yes.
And again, they're going to have to show me. And this is not being a hater, because I'm going to get probably BC fans going, what are you saying? I saw someone tweeting out me and you. I think it was one of our clips, right?
It was my and it was like at the bye week, like season predictions, in which I'm pretty sure I picked BC to lose both these games between the 2 bye weeks.
So they can hate on us all they want, but like, show me that, Bill wants to fix this offense. Let's see the offense get fixed. If they can fix it this game, I'll have a different outlook into a lot of these other ones, but I've watched them against Michigan State. I know it was raining. I watched them for a whole half against Mizzou not do anything. I watched them against Western Kentucky without Thomas Castellanos. We've seen enough of it where I'm just like, again, until you can, he keeps saying this, 60 minutes. We have to play a 60-minute game. Okay. When I see a 60-minute game, I will pick BC again. But right now, Louisville's just too explosive for me to pick against them. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals here.
And I think you're forgetting the one thing that would definitely it's the reason why BC could have a victory here. You just win. That's it. You just win. Right?
Just win.
Yeah, just win.
Right. Just win. Yep. And so again, you got to just win.
And then just win.
Just win. But I think, again, this is going to be one of the toughest. This and SMU, to me, I think are the toughest 2 matchups that they have. It's going to be a very different SMU team than you guys remember last year. I mean, their quarterback looks like last year he looked like he was running in mud. This year he looks one of the fastest quarterbacks I've seen all year.
And he's playing much better passing too.
Yes, he's good.
And I started the show with this. I think I ended last week's show with this. We went into the season figuring this game would be a loss. These 2 games between the byes were going to be tough. And so let's not penalize this team twice for, losing a game that we thought was going to be a loss in the preseason. We were pretty unsure about in middle of the season. And then for the last 2 weeks, we've been like, yeah, they're probably gonna lose this game. So let's
Yep.
not, lose our minds when this is a loss, because again, BC is Louisville's favored by more than a touchdown. Louisville's a pretty good football team. They've had a lot of one score games for the last 2 weeks. They've had some luck go their way some ways, some weeks go against some other weeks. But this is a pretty good team that beat the crap out of BC last year. And again, they've had a lot of different personnel, but it's still a very good coaching staff that knows how to win football games. So let's not, lose our minds if BC doesn't have the best game.
And as Mitch and I were talking about earlier, right? Like we both don't believe in Syracuse and Pitt. And I you're thinking about like what positives there's still left on the schedule. Beating the crap out of a fraudulent Syracuse team would be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they come in, 7-1 or whatever, and they're, Fran Brown is talking and they're all talking, and you bring them home and, in front of a crowd of BC fans, beat them. Then you beat Pitt, who's another fraud team. This is all going to get clipped and I'm going to get called on later. And I'm fine with it, right? But I'm just saying, like, there's a potential that these games could go your way. And then those are like, they're rivals. That you could still win and still have a good end to your season if you lose to Louisville. So this is still not like the end of the world. There's still a lot of positivity here. Stay tuned. So Mitch, where can people find your work?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter. Check out our work in Eagle Insider. Have the matchup report. 3-weekly preview will be up by the time you're listening to this, most likely, to get you all prepared for this Louisville game. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
And this is AJ Black. You follow me at AJ Black 247. I will be at the game tomorrow. Hopefully, I will get the yardage right when I ask Bill O'Brien a question. Anyways. And you can check me out. I will do a postcast after the game in the press box with instant reaction from the game. If it's an interesting game, I will go to the press conference beforehand. But if it's not, I will probably just go right to the post because I don't want to be at BC until 1 a.m. again. But I'm not lazy, guys, I promise. But I will be there. Check me out on Twitter. Check me out on Eagle Insider, and check Mitch Wolf's workout. His work. I get it in this episode.
I do not have a workout plan. Absolutely. do not follow me for that kind of advice.
And thank you all. And we'll see you again for another episode of Locked On Boston College. Your team every day.
Just win.